If the mandible is discarded, the anterior part of this aspect of the skull is seen to be formed by the hard palate. The palatal processes of the maxilla and the horizontal plates of the palatine bones can be identified. In the midline anteriorly is the incisive fossa and foramen. Posterolaterally are the greater and lesser palatine foramina. Above the posterior edge of the hard palate are the choana, posterior nasal apertures. These are separated from each other by the posterior margin of the vomer and are bounded laterally by the medial pterygoid plates or the sphenoid bone. The inferior end of the medial pterygoid plate is prolonged as a curved spike of bone, the pterygoid humulus. Posterolateral to the lateral pterygoid plate, the greater wing of the sphenoid is pierced by the large foramen ovale and the small foramen spinosum. Posterolateral to the foramen spinosum is the spine of the sphenoid. Behind the spine of the sphenoid, in the interval between the greater wing of the sphenoid and the petrous part of the temporal bone, is a groove for the cartilaginous part of the auditory tube. The opening of the bony part of the tube can be identified. Here it is. The mandibular fossa of the temporal bone and the articular tubercle form the upper articular surface for the temporomandibular joint. Separating the mandibular fossa from the tympanic plate posteriorly is the squamo-tympanic fissure. To the medial end of each, the corda tympani nerve exits from the tympanic cavity. The styloid process of the temporal bone projects downward and forward from its inferior aspect. The opening of the carotid canal can be seen on the internal surface of the petrous part of the temporal bone. The medial end of the petrous part of the temporal bone is irregular and, together with the basilar part of the occipital bone and the greater wing of the sphenoid, form the foramen lacerum. During life, the foramen lacerum is closed with fibrous tissue, and only a few small vessels pass through it. The tympanic plate, which forms the part of temporal bone, is C-shaped on section and forms the bony part of the external auditory meatus. While examining this region, identify the suprameatal crest on the lateral surface of the squamous part of the temporal bone, the suprameatal triangle, and the suprameatal spine. Here it is. In the interval between the styloid and mastoid processes, the stylomastoid foramen can be seen. Medial to the styloid process, the petrous part of the temporal bone has a deep notch, which, together with a shallow notch on the occipital bone, forms the jugular foramen. Here it is. Behind the posterior aperture of the nose and in front of the foramen magnum are the sphenoid bone and the basilar part of the occipital bone. The pharyngeal tubercle is a small prominence on the undersurface of the basilar part of the occipital bone in the midline. The occipital condyles should be identified. They articulate with their first cervical vertebra, the atlas. Superior to the occipital condyle is the hypoglossal canal for transmission of the hypoglossal nerve. Posterior to the foramen magnum, in the midline, is the external occipital protuberance. The superior nuchal lines should be identified as they curve laterally on each side. First of all, the hard palate, the palatal processes of the maxilla, horizontal plates of the palatine bones, incisive fossa, greater and lesser palatine foramina, choana, vomer, medial pterygoid plate, lateral pterygoid plate, pterygoid humulus, foramen ovale, foramen spinosum, spine of the sphenoid, auditory tube opening, mandibular fossa, articular tubercle, squamo-tympanic fissure, styloid process, carotid canal, foramen lacerum, tympanic plate, external auditory meatus, suprameatal crest, suprameatal triangle, and the suprameatal spine, stylomastoid foramen, jugular foramen, pharyngeal tubercle, occipital condyles, and hypoglossal canal.